that our forefathers were forced to leave their homes against their choice. Why are we banishing ourselves?
Hmm. Right.
Why are we giving ourselves this exile? Like in my personal life, I feel that whenever I really truly deeply feel anything, there is only silence. I am I don't consider myself balanced. I have a lot of issues that I've been going through in my life, like everybody else. Like you, Anuj, like everybody else. I have not seen one person who is completely and 100% sorted.
So the filmmaker that I'm joined with today, honestly needs no introduction. I mean, I think unka kaam aur unka naam dono hi kafi hai. Just to kind of really exemplify and how much I absolutely adore and admire his world of cinema. That is, of course, Imtiaz Ali. And last time we spoke with Imtiaz, it was during the re-release of Rockstar, and now we are here to talk about his next film, Main Vaapas Aaunga. So Imtiaz, thank you so much for joining me on Filme Shilmy, and it's so good to have you back on our platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuj. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Lovely. So look, Imtiaz, when we last spoke about Rockstar, I think you mentioned then as well that today's audiences want something genuine rather than borrowed structures.
Yeah.
Main Vaapas Aaunga kind of, in a way, arrives at a time which feels very divided and disconnected. So I guess throughout the making of this film, what truth were you personally searching for whilst making it?
The truth that actually led me to make this film is that I met in Punjab, especially while in the shooting of Chamkila and my other films, many partition veterans, people that had seen partition with their own eyes. And I got fascinated by the stories they were telling. Even in Delhi, in places like Rajendra Nagar and Karol Bagh, with the help of some of my friends, I reached out to many families and many veterans and heard their stories about unpartitioned India, about what it was for them to move across. And finally, and this is the truth that I was actually trying to, that made me make this film,
Hmm.
that was the tone of their stories was always that of love,
Yeah.
longing, missing home, but of love, not of hatred, not of division. And when I say no hatred, I mean no hatred which is communal, no hatred that is anything. But
Hmm.
78 years later, this veteran generation that has actually seen partition, has been affected in the worst way possible by partition, is now talking about beautiful things.
Hmm.
It's talking about that beautiful tree that had those flowers that he can't go and see anymore. They are talking about this girl who used to come to so and so dad's shop, and that's how he would see her. That guy who would come down stories like that. Or the river, they missed, like there is this river love,
Hmm.
that I used to go to the bank. So there's a friend of my dad's who's written a poem on Ravi ke Kinare.
Right.
So I feel these beautiful things of love is what they remember, and this is not what we knew.
Hmm.
We don't know this narrative, and of course, a lot of films have been made about partition. But now, 78 years later, how do they remember it? What is it that they yearn for? Is there a moral that is hidden in the story? And I found this. And Main Vaapas Aaunga is almost like an amalgamation of so many details that I've heard in the stories of several partition veterans. And I met many of them. So this is the truth. And I was trying to see what it was for someone to be in that situation. What is humanity? How does it actually survive such a brutal and a violent time? And I was seeking those kinds of answers.
Right, right. That's so beautiful. I think it's interesting because your earlier films often asked, "Who am I?" Right? They kind of
Yeah.
had that whole internal conflict that was there. Main Vaapas Aaunga, however, appears to ask a slightly different question here. It says, "Where do I belong?" And I think it's interesting because it kind of sits between memory, um, and trauma at the same time, but also love. And I think that's what I find really fascinating. But was that distinction important for
That's
you?
a very, Anuj, I must say that's a very interesting point. I never thought it, nobody mentioned it in this way.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that distinction from who am I to where do I belong, how
Hmm.
important was that distinction, important for you and Nainika as well, whilst you were writing the film as well.
I was not aware of this distinction actually. I was not even thinking about what this film should be about. And I'm glad that you mentioned that it's not about who am I, and it's about other things. And so that means that I'm on the path of a discovery. I didn't consciously do it, but yes, this was about other people. And I wanted to make it in their lifetimes. And I wanted to also register it in their combined consciousness that we hear you, brother. We hear you, we see you, we know, and we've not forgotten. You know, so it was not a conscious decision, but I'm glad that that distinction was created between who am I to other things. It's about where do I belong. It's also about who's my constant companion.
Hmm,
What do I carry always?
right.
So it's like if I have been forced to leave my home, what have I carried?
Hmm. I'm glad you mentioned this because, I think you recently also described migration as one of the defining stories of humanity. And while I think while researching, I mean, like you described your experience as well when you were shooting for Chamkila, and you understood a lot about from the personal human experiences, lived experiences. But what did displacement and migration largely kind of teach you about identity that genuinely took you by surprise as well?
Um, this this question of what do they carry? What I realized is what I was actually very surprised, enthused, invigorated by is that there seems to be in the hearts of all of these people that have gone through the horrors of partition a beautiful picture of something that they have kept close to themselves, and year after year, that has been their companion. That is how they have managed to endure their lives. We've heard stories where people from princely backgrounds have been put into, after crossing the border, put into one room with seven of them living somewhere in Amritsar, etc. They survived selling buttons on the streets, etc., etc. What is it that kept them going? It was not hatred. It was their personal treasure of something loving.
Hmm,
This is what was shocking. It was devastating.
right. Wow. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Like how it goes from one life to another. It's like a complete what do you call it? Like a pendulum. It just sounds it's incredible, quite incredibly like alarming when you describe it like that, to be very honest. And partition like itself,
Yeah.
yeah, go on. Yeah.
I wanted to say one more thing, though, that I realized because I've been shooting in Punjab and I've been kind of aware of what's going on over there. What was also shocking is the fact that whenever I went to Punjab, I saw, because I go to shoot Chamkila in the far out places, and one type of service which is surely available in the remotest village is what is called IELTS. These are
Hmm.
courses that people take to go abroad. Everybody seems to be in a rush to go abroad, to Canada, to the UK, everywhere else, right? Now, the point is that, and many of them have gone through, are coming from families that have gone through the pain of forced migration. So the question that happens is, and this is to the population of India, that our forefathers were forced to leave their homes against their choice. Why are we banishing ourselves?
Hmm. Right.
Why are we giving ourselves this exile? They didn't have a choice, but don't we? And then therefore the sense of belonging, therefore the sense of where do I belong? Another question that
Hmm.
I think, someone told me after watching the rough cut of this film. The point is, the kind of so called love that existed in the past, is it only possible in the past? पुराने जमाने में ही ऐसा प्यार मुमकिन था, अब हमें नहीं मिल सकता इस दुनिया में? क्या वो टाइम चला गया है? क्या वो लोग किसी और मशीन से बने थे और हम किसी और machine se bane? Things
Hmm.
like that are also questions because the film is very contemporary. It's happening in now time and cutting back to flashback.
Right. It's so fascinating, and I often say this because Um, I remember actually in the way you ask these questions are so simple, right? And this kind of makes me remember that one scene in Love Aaj Kal, the first one. And I think I mentioned this in our last interview as well, when Jay simply asks Meera, "Are you married, Meera?" And this scene, honestly, for me, I feel it's one of your best scenes ever in your entire filmography because it is such a simple line, yet it carries the weight of regret, lost innocence, and the realization that time has moved on. And I think with Main Vaapas Aaunga, these kind of themes and concepts, in a way, we come to the surface again. Your films often find emotional devastation in seemingly really ordinary moments. Why do those quieter moments resonate more deeply with you rather than the grand declarations and the grand, sort of um larger than life way of cinema which we're so used to?
Because there's a saying, I'll say it in Hindi, जब दिल टूटता है तो आवाज नहीं आती. And I feel that it's beautiful that most of the things we feel and we process are very silent, very personal, and very individual. It's rare that we are even able to express those emotion at that time to anybody. The reason you like, or I think the reason why people like the scene that you are talking about now, is because in that moment, Jay was able to express it to Meera at the time that he felt it.
Hmm.
And they could share this moment. It was such a real moment. And I feel that there are, like in my personal life, I feel that whenever I really, truly, deeply feel anything, there is only silence. There is not even any way of, um, there is nothing else. The grand gestures, etc., are sometimes echoes, of what you felt, and sometimes even not genuine echoes, like little ostentatious echoes of what you might have felt at some other time.
Right. And one thing that I have always noticed about your filmography, Imtiaz, is that your characters rarely struggle against villains. Um, uh, they often struggle against themselves. Whether it's Jay, Jordan, Ved, Veronica, there is an internal awkwardness, emotional dysfunction, and often a crisis of identity, which was the earlier point that I was making as well. Why are you so drawn to emotionally displaced characters? I would love to know that. And how do you manage to construct human awkwardness so beautifully on screen?
Because I feel it myself. And while I am a filmmaker and I make movies hoping that thousands and lakhs of people watch them, but I am one of the prime audience members myself. And especially as a filmmaker, I am pushed to discuss in my movies what I'm actually discussing internally also. I am, I don't consider myself balanced. I have a lot of issues that I've been going through in my life, like everybody else, like you, Anuj, like everybody else. I have not seen one person who is completely and 100% sorted.
Right.
And thank God for that, because that will be such a boring existence. So conflict exists in every person I've met in my life. And if you look at a certain aspect of their lives, then it becomes dramatic enough to make a movie on. But then it's insightful. You know, you have got to look at others in the way that you look at yourself. And I don't know. I just feel compelled. I don't have a villain figure in my life. I don't. I might want to make somebody the villain to make it convenient. But usually, I'm aware of the fact that there is something in me that is stopping me from getting what I want. You know. So anyway, so that I guess reflects in my movies.
Right. But I'll tell you what else really you reflect very beautifully is the social dysfunctions through personal stories is what I find really deeply fascinating. Whether it is whether it is conformity in Tamasha, fame in Rockstar, trauma in Highway, or artistic rebellion in Chamkila, society itself often feels like an invisible antagonist, really. You know,
Yeah.
I think, just based on what your response was as well, do you consciously begin with the social dilemma or emotional dilemma first? What is your first approach as a filmmaker usually?
My first approach is the person and what they are going through. And usually they seem to have a conflict, and there is something that they have to do in relation to other people, which is society, and whatever their society might be. I've also seen in my own films this whole thing of this anti-establishment, if you could call it that, or not fitting in. I feel I'm like that. I feel I find it very difficult to fit in. I try very hard to fit in every group, and 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 then but there is also something which makes me not fit in, and so I feel there is a conflict there, and that reflects itself. I have no reason to be angry actually at society. It's not that I'm a personal victim in any way. But then sometimes that angst comes out. And sometimes actually you're also carrying the stories and emotions of other people. Like my friend said, I might have told you, Anuj, that there's a friend of mine after Rockstar was saying, you really represented our angst so well when you said Sada ha keh tera. And I said that what angst do you have, brother? You have no bloody angst in your life. You have a privileged background boy who also was good in their studies, and you went to the bill. There's no problem in it. What's your angst? He said, yeah, man, what's my angst? Why do I feel so connected to that angst of Sada Kathira? Because the society has, many signals that get emitted and get absorbed. And man is called a selfish person and a selfish animal. All of that is fine, but it's also very the most sensitive organism, the most empathetic organism possible, like animal possible. So what goes on is that you do feel the empathy if you see some inequality on the society in society, if you see classifications, if you see every day someone being put into an uncomfortable situation because of things that they have no control over. This, I think, permeates into your subconscious, and when artistically it comes out sometime.
Right.
You might not have you don't have to be a victim for everything.
Absolutely. That's so true. And I really relate with that. And I think this is why your films have that resonance. It's because somewhere they tap into that subconscious of people, for example, who have felt like they've not been wronged per se, but they just feel like galat cheeze ho raha hai. And then that intrinsically
Yeah,
then rubs off. It's how Veera felt, right? In
right.
Highway, right? That's exactly what she felt. So, I can
Yeah.
understand that. But look, we are running out of time. So my final question actually, Imtiaz, honestly, I could talk to you for honestly for hours. But after Love Aaj Kal, Rockstar Highway, Tamasha, Amar Singh Chamkila, and now Main Vaapas Aaunga, I think the real question really remains is what is the sawal that Imtiaz Ali is still trying to answer through cinema?
I have not found any answer up till now through cinema. I've only found the opportunity to engage with these questions to wrestle with them, to get some insight about other things, but not really completely find an answer. And I feel life is like that. I feel, you just one day abandon life. I don't think I've particularly learned anything that I was seeking to learn through any film of mine. Main Vaapas Aaunga is on a different scale. It's on a different emotion. Um, it's more for me to just like dive into that cesspool of emotion. You have to be seeking something when you come into this garden. You have to be seeking a butterfly, but you don't find it. You do find a lot of other things. I think cinema making is like that for me. Just
Yeah.
I'll say this line. I think Kafi Saab's line. जुस्तजू जिसकी थी उसको तो ना पाया हमने इस बहाने मगर देख ली दुनिया हमने.
Oof. How beautiful that
No,
is.
it is actually, Shahryar Saab's line, I think. I'm not
But
so sure.
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful line, regardless
Yeah,
of,
जुस्तजू जिसकी थी उसको तो ना पाया इस बहाने मगर देख ली दुनिया.
Oh, so amazing. And do you know what? This is it. Like, honestly, Imtiaz, there's so much that we can talk about, but we have run out of time. And I think, honestly, thank you so much for always, sharing your valuable insights about cinema, about, the themes in your films. And I think that's the most beautiful thing is that, what you seek is seeking you has was Job Harry Met Sejal's tagline by Rumi, right? But I think that applies to every of your film. And I think kahin na kahin, it's like it's interesting how it's so instrumental throughout every movie that you've made, and I cannot wait to check out this one as well. I'm really looking forward to it. I think we've just touched the surface of the film, and I cannot wait to watch the film and actually sort of share my views as well on it. So I'm looking forward to that, Imtiaz. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Anuj. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.